So you are still listening to the We Are West Ham podcast with me, Will Pugh, Tom Edwards and James Jones. And as I've said 1,000 times since the weekend, if you can't be happy at the beginning of a week after West Ham have beaten Tottenham at home to get into the Champions League spots, then I'm afraid to tell you all that you never will be. But I'm delighted to say that joining us again on the We Are West Ham podcast is friend of the show, iconic West Ham striker and loved a goal against Tottenham, is Tony Cottee. Tony, brilliant to have you with us again. I mean, just explain to me how you felt after that. You've scored goals against Tottenham. You scored one, of course, on your debut. That at the weekend, I was listening to the radio this morning. Your mate Gailey was on with Paul Coit, our mutual friend on TalkSport 2, and he was saying, I didn't get Tony Cottee on this morning because I know he'd give it to me both barrels to Paul, who supports Tottenham. And what is it, you know, just to explain what that sort of thing, it still means so much to you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I think, I mean, obviously a lot of it's historic and well before you two youngsters were born, I might add, but there was lots of history. And as my dad always used to say to me, son, he said, if we're in the top flight, we don't like Spurs. He said, if we're in the Championship, we don't like Millwall. And that was as simple as it got. And I think it's passed down through the generations and, you know, the father to son and grandfather to father. So for me as a West Ham fan, and then of course getting into the first team, you know, to play against Spurs, and especially as you've already said, on my debut and scoring on my debut, and then there was always a special meaning for me. And even when I played for other clubs, I just loved scoring against Spurs because of that growing up really as a fan. And yeah, I don't like the word hatred. I really don't. I don't like to say I hate anyone or anything. I think it's a very strong and powerful word, but I think it's fair to say we don't really like it, neighbours. I think that's about as diplomatic as I'm going to get, I think. So I think, you know, to put one over on Tottenham is always great. And that was following on from the fantastic 3-3 draw, you know, with the goal of the season from Lanzini, etc. So, you know, to get 4 points off what is a very good Spurs team, let's be honest about it. They've got some good players, you know. I think it was great. And it was great to be a West Ham fan last night, wasn't it? You know, I don't think we played brilliantly, but in terms of a result, it was a fantastic result. And I think if you ask the lads that come through the academy, particularly Deck, you know, Ben Johnson, Nobes, ask them what it means to play against Spurs, and they'll say the same as me.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard Declan on TalkSport this morning. Great interview. I mean, I love every time he speaks, but he's just talking openly. Look, I don't care what David Moyes says about playing it down. I want to be in the Champions League, and I love winning against them. And it is brilliant to hear. Tony, I mentioned I texted Paul this morning, Paul Coit, and said, Paul, you know, it's nothing to be sniffed at. Mid-table clubs like yours, you should be delighted you got a point off us Champions League certs. Does it? We've mentioned sort of what it means and that win yesterday, and it is every single season, whether we're floundering at the bottom, mid-table, or like this season, it always means loads to beat Tottenham, and the fans do absolutely love it. And often it's the best thing and the only thing that might have happened in a pretty glum season. But this year, do you feel like it means more? Because I know we got into the 4th place position, the Champions League spot. Obviously, it's yet to be seen whether we'll be able to hold on to that. That is going to be some task. But do you think it means more this year because of the position the team's in? Because for me yesterday, it felt like excellent. We've beat Tottenham, which is brilliant. But I felt so much more happy than I might usually because of the bigger picture, and it's so much nicer for that not to be the pinnacle of your season.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, Will. I think, you know, in what you would call a normal West Ham season, we're either fighting relegation or we're in mid-table. That is what a normal West Ham season is, and we don't like to admit that, and we're not comfortable with it. But let's be honest, if you look at our results in the Premier League, the Premier League's been going, 28, 29 years now. You know, there's not been too many times where we've been up there pushing to get into Europe. You know, I think there was a few times certainly under the Harry Redknapp regime. And then there's been other sort of isolated seasons. But it's been a while, really. You know, we had that great season, the last one at Upton Park under Slaven, where we were sort of pushing and in the cup quarter final, etc. But I think the difference this year is that we've been consistent, and it's not a word that you normally associate with any West Ham team, that word consistent, you know, because we've been getting the results. I think since Christmas, New Year, I think we've been pushing and sort of in and around the European places, you know, in other words, either sort of 7th, 8th and 6th and 5th, and now we've gone up to 4th. And I think that's what makes it better. That you're right. The victory against Spurs is great. It's always great. It doesn't matter whether you're getting relegated. If you beat Spurs, we're happy. We all know that. But I think to beat them and push your European credentials a bit more and get some more points on the board. It's the best points return since the famous '86 season. That's how good a season it is at the moment. And listen, if it all falls apart and we don't win another game between now and the end of the season, we still say, yeah, we beat Spurs, etc. I get all that, but I think there's a little bit more to this team. There seems to be a real discipline about the team, a confidence, a really good team spirit, and we've got some good players as well. And now we've got the right manager in place. There's no reason with what's been going. It's been such a bizarre, weird season. We all know that. Whether it's only to do with the fans not being there or not, I don't know. But it's certainly played a large part in some of the crazy results we've had. But we've been very consistent this year, and we're not. I wouldn't say we're in full position and been lucky. I think we're in fourth position and we deserve to be there, and that is the biggest compliment I can pay everyone.
Tony, you're talking about this year and you're talking about our upturn in form, and one of the main things is obviously Thomas Souček. And yesterday again he put in a blind of a performance like the Terminator. Everyone said when he got hit, blood pouring out his head, he gets back up to make that block again, and he's been such a key man in our turnaround along with Soufal. And you being in a dressing room, how much can one or two players make that difference? Because supposedly they're coming in and staying behind and they're the ones sort of driving the mentality to be this European team. How important is it to have people like that come in, and how much of an impact could they actually put just down to those two, really?
Well, I don't think you could put it down to just those two. Let's not forget Jarrod Bowen's coming to the club, and particularly over the last 2 or 3 games, Jess Lingard's been fantastic, hasn't he? So, there's been other signings as well. But I can liken it to the '86 season because, we had some very good players at the football club. And then we signed Frank McAvenny and Mark Ward, who went on to become great players for the football club. We got Alan Devonshire back from a long-term injury. So those 3 players coming back into a team that was already pretty talented anyway makes a huge difference, and it gives everyone a boost. And, especially if they fill key positions, positions that have perhaps been not a weakness, but a problem position. Certainly the right back, right wing back position. It was, we needed to get someone in there. We needed someone in midfield really to replace Nobes. And, I know Nobes is still about and part of the squad and everything, but, he's not been able to play regular because of Souček's form. So, they've been 2 key players, and they can make a massive, they can play a massive part in what goes on in the dressing room. And also, if as well, we're like what you're saying, if they're working hard in training and they're winners and they're battling away and everything. And what I liked about Souček yesterday was that, he's gone up for that header, a big whack of heads. It looked awful, didn't it, the actual incident? And as soon as the camera panned on him, blood pouring everywhere. And his first thought really was, how quick can I get to the dressing room to get stitched up and get back on, or put some Vaseline on me and get back on the pitch? And, we've seen many a player, I think, over the last sort of few years who, they have a little knock like that and you don't see him again. But not Souček. There was even no way in a million years he weren't coming back onto the field of play, which tells you everything. They're both tough boys from the Czech Republic, but they're good footballers as well. And I don't want to praise them as the only 2 that have made a difference, but they've certainly made a big difference. There's no doubt about that, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just so nice to see, you've touched on it there, Tony, everyone pulling in the same direction. You only need to go back, just 6 weeks maybe, when Sebastian Haller was still playing up front. And obviously he's got talent, he's gone on, he's doing well at Ajax, but ultimately everyone could see it. Some factions of fans didn't want to say it because he costs a lot of money, and understandably sometimes supporters don't want to get too caught up in the negatives. They want to try and see positives and encourage these players. But Sebastian Haller wasn't cutting it. No matter how much he cost, he wasn't putting as much effort in as the rest. And you can see now that when you've got 11 who are all doing the same, the value in that has been huge to the team. Tony, before, I know Tom wants to ask you about a couple of milestones of your own, and I want to get your thoughts on what we can actually do this season. But you mentioned Mark Noble there, so I'll ask you now. What do you think would be, or what do you think might happen, or what do you think would be best for the club to do? Because there's so many fans this year. Mark tweeted after the game on the weekend and just said, "Have a lovely evening with the crossed hammers." Obviously feels so He's got such a bond with the fans, and understandably, when you put all those years and time and effort and loyalty into a club, you're going to get nothing but love in return, which is what Mark gets. There are understandable questions. He's alluded to it in interviews about he doesn't know how much he's got, how long he's got left, etc., etc. What do you think? Sort of, what do you make of that whole situation? What are your thoughts on it? Because for him to not get a send off in front of fans, that would be heartbreaking, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you might know more than me. Well, I don't know whether is his contract up at the end of the season, or is he
at the moment, yeah.
At the moment, yeah. Well, listen, I personally, I can't see any way that the club won't offer him a 1-year extension. I really don't. You're right. You can't give him a send off with no fans. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I know the club have made some poor decisions over the years. I can think of quite a few where they've not really done the right thing. But I think in the case of Mark Noble, you've got to make an exception. Listen, I don't think he should get a year as a token value. I think you should get a year for your input that you put into the football club. And what the fans won't always appreciate, and particularly nowadays, even more so than when I was playing, is the captain is a huge part of what goes on in the dressing room. And it's not just about what you do on the field of play. The fans see what you're doing on the field of play, but they don't see what you're doing behind the scenes. They don't see you organising stuff for the boys. They don't see you organising the community aspect of things. That doesn't always get appreciated. So Nobes plays a massive part of what goes on off the field, as well as what's going on the field. You see the respect he's got as soon as he comes on the field to play. Funny enough, I don't think they've done it yesterday, but Deck can't wait to get his armband off. And I don't think he did it yesterday because there was only about 2 minutes left. I might be wrong, but I'm not sure if they passed the armband over. But anyway, I'm digressing. But, I know David Moyes thinks a lot of Mark Noble, an awful lot, and I don't think that he would allow a situation where Mark Noble was allowed to leave the football club or go and play elsewhere, without getting the send-off he deserves. If it's about money, I don't believe it would be, but if it's about money, why not give Nobes a smaller basic salary and give him a huge bonus every time he goes on the field of play? It doesn't matter if it's 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, who cares? But at least he's earned his money, rather than saying we'll give someone a year's contract, getting what might be big money and not sort of playing. But I still think he's got an awful lot to bring to the table. He has to stay at the football club. The one thing I detest about football is when they don't look after their players that come through the system. And there's been too many examples. I can think of Steven Gerrard, one off straight away off the top of my head, John Terry at Chelsea, and Mark Noble at West Ham. Those players should still be at their football club. They should still be involved there, whether that's coaching, whether that's as an ambassador, whatever the player wants to do. Not everyone wants to be a manager. No one wants to be a coach. Everyone wants to go into the media. Sometimes just have an ambassador. When Mark Noble, he might retire and he goes to every game and he's just there. A bit like what Ledley King done for Spurs, I suppose. Yeah. And now look at Ledley on the coaching staff. So I personally, I think Nobes has to stay at the football club, give him another year's contract, work out the money and what that means to Nobes and the football club, but keep him involved. He's a huge presence in that dressing room, huge. And we need him to stay at the football club, because I think, especially if, as we all hope, we're in Europe next year, you need a captain and a leader to help you get around Europe and navigate all the issues and stuff that's going to go on with that campaign. So he has to stay 100%.
Tony, another thing on Noble, sort of his relationship with Declan Rice and how critical he's been to his fast track as one of the leaders now in the squad, and obviously sort of giving him into that mentality that he had being a one club man. And obviously that's what we all would love Declan Rice to be. It's far-fetched. He's very young and he is one of the most talented players in the league. But how critical will it be for him to have a few more years with Noble, whatever that may be, if it's coaching or if it's part of the squad? Because ideally that's what we want. And Declan Rice can still do with a lot of learning. So how much do we need that to carry on in the next few years or so?
Well, of course, yeah, you're right, Tom. Listen, don't forget that Deck would have, when the age that he joined the club, I think it was 14, 15, I think I'm right in saying. And from that 14. Moment, he would have seen that the captain of the football club was Mark Noble. We're going back 6 or 7 years now. And then when a young kid comes through the academy, and, I had that with myself and that, because a few years after I got into the first team, you had the likes of Stevie Potts come through, Stuart Slater come through, Paul Ince, these fantastic players. And when you come through the academy yourself, you feel an attachment with these players, and you feel like you want to help them and guide them, and do whatever you can do to make it easier, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch, as I've already spoke about with Noble. So Deck would have the utmost respect for Mark Noble, and Deck would want him to stay at the football club. And I think all the players would as well, because you need that team spirit. You need that local lad, that leader and everything. And Deck would say that. I'm pretty certain he would say that as well, that he would want Mark Noble to stay at the football club. Yes, the armband's going to get passed on. We all know that Deck is our captain on the field at the moment, and going forward, we all hope he's there as captain for the next 10, 15 years. Let's hope so, because that means we've won things and we're doing things as a football club. But we need to keep Deck at the football club. And there's probably an argument that keeping Nobes at the football club that's going to help keep Deck at the football club at this moment in time, because you want him to be happy. You want him, you want your captain to be playing games and thinking that, like what he said on the radio this morning. I heard what he said, and he said that we believe we've got a chance of getting in the Champions League. If you want to keep Declan Rice at our football club, I've said it before, there's only two ways of doing that, and it ain't money. It's winning something or playing in Europe. They are the two reasons that I left the football club, and that's been going on, that other players have left to go and try and win things elsewhere, and that is what we've got to do with that. We need to try and win something or qualify for Europe. Even if we get in the Europa League, there's more chance of Declan Rice staying because of that than if we don't get in the Europa League. So let's hope we qualify for Europe. Let's keep Nobes at the football club, bring it all together, and why change it? That would be my argument, Tom. Why change it? Nothing's broken. Don't change it. Don't try and get rid of people and do it. Just keep it as it is. Let the manager just keep slowly ticking over. And if there's a couple of bits of dead wood, you move them on and bring in a couple of players that want to play for the football club.
Yeah, it does feel like for the first time for such a long time, doesn't it, that there isn't loads of work that needs doing. There's some transfer windows you go into, or some seasons where you think, Jesus, where do you start here? Like, what a nightmare.
Well, we need a couple of centre forwards. That's the one thing.
That is true.
No, I'm not joking. Listen, Mikel's a great player. We all know that, but he's prone to injury, for obvious reasons. We need to bring a couple of centre forwards in to take the pressure off him, so that when he's not quite fit or he's feeling a little tired or whatever, then you can play someone else. And listen, you try and bring in a bigger sort of target man type of player, and then bring in a little smaller goal scorer like myself or something that, so you've got a nice little mixture. And then you've got the powerhouse of Antonio. And going into what we hope is going to be a European campaign next year, we're going to need three centre forwards. So, I agree what you was just about to say. We don't need a lot in the transfer window, but come the summer, we do need to sign at least, in my opinion, at least one forward, maybe two.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we tried to always be balanced on this podcast, and West Ham fans can be, especially like with the stuff with the board. It's quite a strange time that we live in at the moment. There's a lot of anger amongst lots of parts of the fan base, and lots of it is totally justified and understandable. And I think then it just spills over into any issue that comes up. Then that original frustration that's there then spills over into things which might be slightly smaller at other clubs, but we all said the same thing in January. Whilst you don't want to be that doom merchant, unfortunately, it did undermine or make more difficult our push for Europe by not adding a striker in, I think, which it is frustrating. And you don't want to be pushing these negative things when we're playing so well at the moment. And if players can come in, play the false nine, whatever it is, then absolutely happy days.
Temporarily solved the problem, hasn't it? Jess Lingard has temporarily solved the problem, which is great, and I'm really pleased. He's been a great addition to the squad so far. But it was almost a case of they couldn't really win the club because, if you don't sign anyone, people moan, "Oh, we're not ambitious. We should have signed someone." And then if you do bring someone in, that a few years ago we brought in Jordan Hugill, do you remember? And he didn't really play at the club. We spent 8-9 million on him, and then he's moved on or whatever. And then everyone says, "Well, what did you sign him for? What a waste of money." You've got to be careful. So I think the compromise was exactly what the manager did. I don't think you should sign players in January. I think it's a real panic window, and you should always sign players in the summer. And to get in someone like Jess Lingard that the manager knows, it gives him an opportunity to come to London and be the top boy at a wonderful football club. And that's exactly what you look at him. He's smiling, he's happy, and you think to yourself, you know what, we've got a real good chance. I hope they've done some sort of deal about we can buy him for X amount of pounds, because if he keeps playing like he is, then you then get vultures circling because they realise what a good player he actually is. So I hope we've got the first option on him to buy him in the summer.
Well, you wonder that, don't you? Because the way he's playing now, you think Manchester United must be looking at it and going, "Oh yeah, well we'll be having him back." I know Fernandes is playing out of his skin, but for someone like that, they play so many games, don't they? United, you think they'd certainly want him back as well. But hopefully, he just enjoys himself so much this season and decides that a fresh start and that he wants a bit more of that and something else, a bit more of a permanent deal would be great to see. Tony, you mentioned there about, you don't feel like, or might have been a bit fortunate at the weekend, but obviously were with Spurs hitting the post and that sort of thing. That's why I'm enjoying this season so much, because I can only think back to, I think, Fulham at home with the Lookman penalty and maybe Aston Villa at home where we were clinging on. They're the only two games I think, oh, we were lucky there. We were really fortunate. And the rest of the time, you do feel we deserve to be in and around where we currently are. Honestly, what is your genuine expectation for the rest of the season now? With all the things we've mentioned, striker, the games we've got coming up, what can we do this year?
Well, listen, potentially we can get in the Champions League. We know that is a realistic potential, if you like, because of where we are, the hard work we put in so far. I still think, bearing in mind we nearly got relegated last year, I still think it might be asking just a little bit too much to get into the Champions League. When it push comes to shove and the pressure's on and the big boys are all fighting for those places at the top, it's going to be very, very difficult. But having said that, listen, Leicester are in a great position as well, and I expect them to finish in the top four. I don't think Manchester United have been brilliant. I think at times have been grinding away. Everton have been really good and inconsistent also at the same time. Liverpool have dropped off the pace, but they will probably improve. And then, of course, you've got Chelsea under a new manager. So it's going to be very, very difficult for us to get into the Champions League spot, that's for sure. If we have a good run of form, if we maintain a good run of form, then, yeah, of course, we've got as good a chance as anyone of getting into that top four. Realistically, I'm expecting us to finish probably 5th, 6th or 7th. That's really where I think we're going to finish. And if we do that, and if we get into the Europa League, I think everyone will turn around and say, what a season that was. Shame that no one could watch the games and go to the grounds, etc. We all know that. But I think everyone will say that's a really good season. And then you get a good problem, because your problem is your squad's not big enough for Europe. You're going to be playing on Thursday and Sunday next year, etc. You then got to bring in the 2 forwards I spoke about. You've got to develop the squad. But that will be a nice problem. And I'm sure the manager will take that as a really nice problem come the end of the season. But my heart says we'll get in the Champions League. My head, being realistic, I think more like the Europa League.
Yeah,
Moyes is.
Sorry,
Tom,
I
was just going to say, Moyes is doing such a good job. Like, everyone can now see it, and he proved a lot of people wrong, including probably all 3 of us on the podcast. We never blamed him, but it seems an odd choice to pretty much every fan at the time. But
because I was the one who
not you, yeah, exactly, not you, not a few. Yeah, but do you think he's even getting the credit he truly deserves for how he's handling the situation? Because even when he gave the interview yesterday, straight to the point, not happy with the team and asking for more in it and not playing it down, but also being sensible. Do you think he's getting the credit he actually deserves for quite what he's done? Because he's turned one of the worst teams we've had in the last 20 years into the best team we've probably had in my lifetime. It was probably better than the Payet team. So I don't think he gets some credit. Do you?
I think he is getting credit. I think that, well, let's put it another way. If he was to pick a manager of the year, Premier League manager of the year at the moment, then surely he would be the favourite, wouldn't he? I think, Brendan Rodgers.
I don't know if he get it. He should be.
Yeah. But, whether he will or not depends on what happens over the next 13 games. We've got the games coming up and that. We've got a particularly difficult period. I think it's Man City, Leeds. Is it Man United, Arsenal? I think I'm right in saying something a lot like that. We've got some tough games coming up. So we'll find out exactly where we are. But listen, David Moyes, for me, he doesn't need to say anything, because the results are saying everything for him. You don't need to come out and say, well, I was right and I've proved everyone wrong and all that. So he doesn't need to say that, because, he's doing it with his actions. The results are speaking for themselves. He doesn't need to come out and say, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. He's doing exactly the right thing. He's playing it down. And then the expectations aren't there then. We just, as a West Ham fan, you boys know this. As a West Ham fan, it's like getting in a roller coaster at the seaside. And you get on that roller coaster and you're up and down, up and down, up and down, and then you don't quite know where it's going to stop or whether you're going to do a loop. And that's exactly what being a West Ham fan is. All football fans probably go through that experience, but as a West Ham fan, you seem to get on that roller coaster, and it's a bit more bumpier than most.
Seems like a lot of loop to loops, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, you never know what you're going to get, do you? So I think we're all just enjoying the ride. I think, listen, I'm a fan. First and foremost, I'm a fan, and I'm just enjoying. I put my telly on in there, and I sit back and I think, you know what, we've got a good chance here, and I'm enjoying watching the football. They're playing good football. They're getting good results, and it's most unlike West Ham. And I think it comes back to the manager. I think the manager's gone in there, and yes, he imposes discipline, and yes, he wants players to give 100%, and yes, he wants tries. But why not? Surely they're the first things you should. That's a given. And I think there's been times over the last 2, 3, 4 years where that's not been a given from certain players. So, the manager's gone and he says, right, okay, you give me 100%, you do what I tell you, and you're going to play for me. And he brings everyone together. I've not been down the training ground for at least a year because of obviously what's been going on. But I know before COVID, it was a fantastic team spirit being built by the manager. So God knows what it must be like now. It must be an absolute dream going into work, like it was in the 86 season. You get to that stage, you can't wait to get into training because it's so good, and you're enjoying your training, you're having a laugh with your mates, and you're going and winning football matches. Happy days. So Moisey's done a great job. He really has. Still hasn't got a contract. So please, West Ham, give the manager a contract. He's up at the end of the season as well. I know there's an option for a year, but we get to the transfer.
He's triggered that option's been triggered.
Right, okay.
They're in provisional talks. Yeah,
it's only for a year, isn't it? And not being funny, right? You're trying to sign a centre forward who's a top player for 20, 25 million pounds and that. You're trying to sign that centre forward, and the manager's got 1 year left on his contract, and he's asking you to sign a 4-year contract. That's not very good from the club's point of view. You should have a manager who's on a long-term contract. Give him the contract he deserves. What he's done, David Moyes, in both spells, by the way, not just this spell, in the first spell as well, he's been outstanding for this football club so far. And given time, he can potentially do what he did at Everton, which is to get them into the Champions League. And that's what, if he does that for West Ham, he'll be a legend forevermore. We all know that. But give him the contract to allow him to do that. He's been brilliant so far. Manager of the season so far, yes, David Moyes for me. But we've got 13 games left, some tough games in there. And will he get the credit? I think that was the original question. Will he get the credit he deserves? He will do at the end of the season. If he gets West Ham in Europe, I think the fans he's slowly won them over. And I think they all appreciate now how good the manager is. And he will get the credit at the end of the season if West Ham are in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, reports at the moment, or latest reports, suggesting that they're in provisional talks about signing a new 3-year deal. The club have approached him, and I think Moyes, and he's in such a strong position now that he's turned around and said, well, that's what I'd like, but it's dependent on certain scouting and transfer plans being put in, which I think is brilliant and is good for the club overall. Tony, we've got 7 minutes left, so we've got you on today. It's absolutely brilliant to have you back joining us again. It only seems like a couple of weeks ago we were talking before we come on air. I think it was November the last time we spoke to you, but it's brilliant to have you on again. But on Friday night you're doing something a little bit different. You're doing a virtual audience, you and your infamous strike partner Frank McAvenny from that Boys of 86 season that you've mentioned. £15. It's a virtual thing. Proceeds go to the Bobby Moore Fund. Fans can go to @TonyCottee9 on Twitter for more details. They can win a signed first team shirt, I understand. Just tell us a little bit more about that. Let me know if I've missed anything. What fans expect.
Yeah, I've got the signed shirts upstairs, so I've got that, and we'll be doing a free raffle. It'll be like the FA Cup draw, where you give it pick the name out. I'm going to read the name out, and that will be the winner of the shirt. But no, I spoke to Frankie, and he's up in Glasgow, and I think it's been tough for him because obviously he's up there and everything's locked down. And it's been tough for me. It's been tough for everyone because you can't do what you want to do. And I said to him, look, I've got an idea. Do you fancy doing this? And he said, yeah, great, love to do it. So it'll be the two of us on a Zoom call. I'm in Essex and he's in Glasgow. The fans will be tuning in, and hopefully we'll have lots of guys tuning in. And it's your chance to ask us the questions. Frank's already done a video. I asked him to do a video clip for me promoting the event. And Frank's words were, if there's any questions about football, Tony will answer them. If there's any questions about anything else, I will answer them. And that tells you everything know about Frank McAvenny. So I'd love to say it's an evening with Frank, but if you say things like that, he'll want to go on at 4 o'clock in the morning, which I don't really want to go on at 4 o'clock in the morning. So it's an audience with myself and Frank, and you've already said, if you can go to my Twitter page and just sort of clock in there, have a little look, all the details are there, and please come and join us, and we'll have a great night. It starts at 8 o'clock on this Friday, 26th of February, and we're looking forward to having a bit of fun.
Great stuff. So that'll be fans can ask you questions like a live forum, that sort of thing.
Yeah, whatever they want. They can ask Frank whatever he wants. I think Frank doesn't like talking about football, so I'm sure the subject will go on to other things, which is fine.
Yeah, I think when we had him on earlier in the season, he was telling us one about where he was a little bit hungover. So he called John Lyle and told him that he couldn't make it into training that day. And John Lyle said, well, there's ITV and BBC cameras outside. You booked him for an interview today. He said, can you sort it, John? He said, yeah, no problem. And Frank said 20 minutes later, a load of TV trucks turned up outside his flat in Romford or whatever it was. So yeah, plenty more stories like that. For those of you listening to the podcast, just head on over to Tony's Twitter at Tony Cottee 9, like you just said, and there's all details on there where you can book your tickets. And great to hear as well, Tony, some of the money going to the Bobby Moore Fund. We're raising a few quid for that charity this year as well. So West Ham fans.
Yeah, it's a great charity, Will. And Steph, Steph is a really personal friend of mine, and it's been tough. All the charities have suffered during COVID. So anything we could do to bring money, I think it all helps.
Absolutely. We'll head on over there. Tony, quick one before we let you go. The Man City game at the weekend, what your thoughts and the score prediction, then we'll say goodbye.
Oh, dearie me. Well, again, it's a heart and head one. You can't believe how well Man City have done. Bearing in mind, they've not had a centre forward and they've won the last 18 games. Law of averages, they're due a defeat or a draw. So, listen, why can't we go there? I want to see us go. I'll tell you not what I expect, but what I want from West Ham. I want West Ham to go there and have a real go. I don't want us to put 11 men behind the ball, sit on the edge of our own box and wait for them to pick us off and Sterling taps in from 2 yards out. I don't want to see that. I want to see us go there with a positive attitude. I watched Arsenal yesterday. They looked scared stiff of Man City. And there's no reason for us to be scared. We've got a good team. We've got good players. We've got a good manager who will tactically set us up to hit them on the counter-attack. And let's see how good they are. And we'll see how good we are as well. And I think it's a really fascinating game to watch. I'm going to be watching the game. In terms of results, it's hard to say we're going to go there and win, but I might go for a sneaky 1-1 draw. And if we get a draw at Man City, I think everyone will go, wow, we are the real deal this year. So it's a big game for us, and it's a big game for City as well, because I think if City win that and other teams lose, then, it'll be a bit of procession. It looks like they're going to win the league. But the Champions League places, as we've spoken about, are well up for grabs. And if we can get a draw, everyone will look at that result and go, do you know what? They're serious contenders here. We need to get our act together. So let's hope they're putting a good performance. It's more about the performance, I think, that I want to see. Rather than the result, I want to see a good performance from us.
Absolutely. Well, Tony Cottee, thanks so much for joining us again.
You're welcome.
Legend. Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant to have you. Remember, everyone, if you want to check out that event, the audience with Tony and Frank on Friday, 26th of February, go over to Tony's Twitter and stay with us.